Righto, so we're just getting ready to head off. Got the van all stowed away, packed up. So just doing my routine checks as I always do on the FTruck before we head off. Check the water and oil, that sort of stuff. And picked up a minor telltale on the header tank. Now I'll just show you what I'm talking about. Righto, so this is the header tank for the coolant system. So that holds the coolant for the radiator, which is under all that. Now I noticed it's wiped off now, but I noticed a little bit of staining around this seam area here and down the side. So just had a bit of a look at that. It was just a bit of a indication there might be something better going on there. Now your radiator cap can pass a bit of pressure off and bleed pressure off if you're working hard, and it can run out the side. So I thought initially it might be that, but as I had a closer look, and I don't know if we'll be able to pick this up, you can see just along there above my finger, just above the seam, that header tank's actually cracked. Now don't really know why I'd want to go and do such a horrible nasty thing to me, but it's going to need to be fixed. So we're going to head into Broken Hill anyway, so I'll make some inquiries about getting one sent up. Now there's a number of different resources we use, so I'll just investigate what we can do about getting another header tank and then I'll replace it. But what it does do is it brings to light the importance of checking your gear. Now I don't care if you've got a brand spanking new vehicle or an older one like this, you need to know how to do some fundamental checks, such as your checking your water, checking your coolant, and just know what looks right and what doesn't look right under the engine bay. Now if you don't know, you just go and find a mechanic or somebody like that who can give you some pointers on how to go about doing that properly. If you don't check your coolant properly, well, you can actually cause problems. If you don't check your oil properly, you can cause problems. But again, it's about knowing your gear, understanding its limitations, and just being that little bit ahead of a problem that develops. Now, at the moment, that header tank, whilst it's not ideal, it's still going to hold coolant and it'll get us down to Broken Hill without any trouble at all. But if we keep pushing it, sooner or later it's going to let go completely, and then it will cause us trouble. Without that, we don't hold the coolant in the radiator, we don't hold the coolant in the radiator, we overheat the engine, we don't go anywhere. So it is extremely important that we get it sorted out, but because checking the gear, knowing what your gear needs to be doing and what looks right and what doesn't look right, we can get in front of it before it causes, well, hopefully, in this case, we got in front of it before it causes major drama. In other cases it might be unavoidable, but let's stack the cards in our favour. Now, even if you don't know much about vehicles, understanding the little telltale signs to look for, that sort of thing, can just save you a lot of stress and a lot of grief. Anyway, that's me for now. I'll pick this up a bit later on when we find a new header tank, and then maybe give you a bit of a look at the process of replacing it. Anyway, all good. Let's head off. Righto, see you around the traps. So after discovering that the header tank was cracked, as I said, we were more than capable of continuing on with just the crack in it. I wasn't losing much coolant or anything like that. So we travelled down to Broken Hill, down Sturt Steps Adventure Way, and then we spent a few days in Broken Hill, having a look at what's going on, getting a bit of a look around the place and a bit of sightseeing, that sort of thing. So now we've got the part, we picked it up on Wednesday morning as we left Broken Hill, and we're out here at Menindee Lakes area. And I'm going to take the opportunity now just to replace that header tank before it gives us any more trouble. Just thought I'd take you through the journey, just see how it goes, but it should be a fairly straightforward job. But I'd suggest that maybe famous last words. Alright, so come for a walk with me. So that's what the header tank looks like. So we've only got the two hose connections to it. And then just a couple of mounting bolts. So the big drama is going to be that hose there hanging out the bottom, because it's fairly difficult to get to once it's in the engine bay. But we'll see if we can't get it sorted out. So the first thing I want to do is release the pressure so that there's no actual pressure in the cooling system, otherwise that's just going to want to spray water and everything everywhere. We'll tack this little breather hose here at the top to start with. So we'll put a clamp on it, and then we need something to bung that hose up out of the header tank, the spigot, so that we can maintain a vapor lock or vacuum locks in the header tank, because when we take the hoses off we don't want the coolant to spew everywhere. So I'm just going to take the spring clamp off. Righto, now here's a bit of hose I've cut, just put a clamp on it so we can put that on there, and that will maintain the seal on the header tank itself. When we undo that big hose down the bottom, one of the mounting screws is underneath the lug nut wrench, so wheel nut spinner. Just take that out of there, unclip that. Righto, so that gives us access here. The other two are down here nice and low. We'll just get unbolted. Now the fundamental plan we have at the moment is with the hose coming out the bottom of the header tank, because as I said it's a fairly difficult thing to get to. I'll unbolt the header tank and then I should be able to lift it up a bit. I might have better access and change its position, tilt it, that sort of thing. Get these couple of mounting screws out of here. So that now means that's free. To be lifted up and moved around. Now what I want to do is just clamp that hose off as well down there. So I've got a pair of these fairly big long beak vice grips which we can put on the hose now for ease of access. I'm going to put it on down the bottom underneath near the radiator. So I'll be back in a sec. So what we're trying to achieve here is coolant's not necessarily very good for the environment. In fact, it's fairly bloody horrible, and given we're in a fairly sensitive area, I've got to capture this coolant. I can't have it draining all over the environment. That's uncool. We'll just need to do a little bit to make sure we don't pollute the countryside, particularly near a water source. So now I've got that clamped off. That should hold the water, oh sorry, that should hold the coolant in the cooling system itself. When I disconnect it from the bottom of the header tank, I need to put my hand over that effectively to stop it running out. There's no other way of doing it. However, with the vacuum lock created by the cap still being on and the hose clamp over there, it should be a little bit reluctant to come out of there, so it should give me time to catch it. I may lose a little bit of coolant, but I'd suggest it's going to be absolutely minimal. Righto, so I managed to catch most of that. There was a minor amount that got away, but it wouldn't even be more than a few mils. So I'll recover this coolant now into a tub. Righto, so we have the new one. We'll just do a reverse of the disassembly process if anyone's read a workshop manual before. It should be a familiar term. One of the first things we can do now is put the small hose back on. It can sit there and doesn't have to necessarily be fully assembled, but that keeps that sealed. Then I'm going to recover the long beak vice grips from underneath. Because I'm using those on the spring clamp, which is similar to the one on the radiator there. Just got to put it back onto the bottom of the header tank before I bolt it down. Again, just allows me to move things around a bit, which is one of those things that always sounds a lot easier than it actually is. No matter. I'll just put the vice grips down there in the radiator area for safekeeping. One moment. Right, they're recovered. That hose clamp is now where I want it to be. So we're just putting the securing bolts back in there. Now we don't want to tighten those up until we've got that third one in, so we don't put stress on it. Move that back into where it's supposed to be. Really like the tension that's on that at the moment. There's not much we can do with it. That's the way it's made. So we'll just tighten it up anyway. Actually, not right. Set back there a bit. Alright, so that fits there. Tighten up these other couple of long mounting bolts down here. This clamp off here and then fully position that where it needs to be. Have a quick look over our work and check it. Pretty good. That's on, that's secured, we've got it tightened up, righto. So now it's more or less just a matter of refilling the coolant. So as you can see there, the coolant's actually started to reflood the new header tank. Now I have the pipes set up and the clamps off them, it's just finding its own level. So had I not clamped off those hoses, what it would have meant is coolant would have just kept leaking out of this cooling system until such time as it had found a natural balance. So that's why the extra effort goes into clamping all that off. Righto, so this is the coolant that we captured out of the other header tank. Now I've got to try and get it in without pouring it all over the place. So all we've got to do is just let that cooling system balance itself again. This amount of coolant came out of it, so I can go back in again. Now, given that's one of my food storage tubs, I'll probably get that cleaned out before I put it away. Now, I'm not going to put the radiator cap on yet, because what I wanted to do is I want to see that coolant just balance out again. So by just letting it atmosphere, it can actually find its own level. I'll put the wheel nut spanner back on, and effectively that's the job done, with the exception of obviously putting that radiator cap back on. So as I said, fairly straightforward sort of a job. Being a mechanic, I obviously carry quite a few tools with me, so that also helps obviously. If you don't know what you're doing, obviously you wouldn't want to strap something like that on. Either cause more problems or just get yourself in a world of hurt one way or another. So, but that's how that's replaced. Spin that cap back on. Now they self-ratchet. You don't need to watch it, but what I'll do is I'll actually take the cap back off. I'll start the truck up and run it for a while to actually make sure that coolant doesn't have any air in it. Okay, so this is the old header tank. You can see a bit of the old scum line in it from stuff that boils off top of the coolant. Now the point of interest is that crack just above the seam there. That's what caused the failure in the end. It hasn't really propagated from where it was when I first found it, so from that perspective they're not necessarily an emergency breakdown, but certainly, well in this case it wasn't, but certainly you want to get that sort of thing fixed before you go off and do damage to your engine, and for me certainly before I head off into any sort of remote areas, because if it did fail completely and drop the coolant, well then I'm in a world of hurt. Righto, so obviously it hasn't become all brittle necessarily, it's just cracked from fatigue. Ford knew apparently they had an issue and weren't that keen to do something about it, so the story goes. Either way, we've now replaced it and we're effectively back on the road. Well, now we're going to go fishing. Righto, see you around the traps.